All right, we're nearing the end of Module 8. We're talking about all different types of links. I should have started this video at the beginning of Module 8 because it's a tactic that is very effective, and that's interview links. Now, when I say interview links, I don't mean the type of link where you get somebody to interview you and they post that interview on their website and you have a link. Well, that'd be great if you could pull that off, but you pretty much have to be an influencer for that to take place. But it doesn't mean that you still can't earn links by conducting interviews with influencers in your industry. Let me show you how we do it, and then you can decide for yourself whether or not it's a tactic that you want to employ in your business. I like this tactic a lot because it gives me an opportunity to build a deeper relationship with an influencer. As I'm interviewing him or her, I'm listening. I'm giving them a chance to communicate about their business and to pitch their business and to really self-promote. Self-promotion is so frowned upon in society and on the web that when you give somebody a chance to self-promote, they take it. And so that's what we're giving an influencer here and the opportunity to do, is to promote themselves. And if I get a half an hour conversation with an influencer, I love it. And they like it too because they get a chance to self-promote. And then at the end of that interview, they're going to have, for the most part, as long as the interview went well, they're going to like me more than they did before the interview. And the same will be true for you too if you follow these best practices. Now, what I recommend you do is to find the people in your industry who grant interviews and also who link to those interviews. Those are two really important caveats. Find the people in your industry who grant interviews, and also they link to the interviews. Now, in this case, a lot of times you may take your best prospects, say, call them your golden prospects, and you may have 50 golden prospects. You may feel like going through and asking all 50 of those golden prospects if you can interview them. And by all means, go for it. You should, but that means you're going to have to do a lot of extra work for the people who turn you down, because you have a lot of front-end work you should do before you ask anyone for an interview. And so I like to find people in the industry who, whatever industry I'm targeting with the site, who grant interviews and also link to them. And that's not that hard to do. And let me show you. Like, for instance, EricWard.com. I'm on his site. And, well, let me show you the, well, I'll show you that in a minute. I figured I could get a link from Eric just from not granting, but conducting an interview with him and allowing him to self-promote. And so what I did was I looked at, first of all, I had to check to see if Eric granted interviews. So I did a site search, site:ericward.com, and then interview. And you could do that for any of your prospects. And it's going to find out, whoops, I guess I got to put the .com in there, right? Yeah. I'm glad I didn't do that the first time I did the search. I wouldn't have asked Eric for an interview. But I looked on here and I said, well, he has a linking strategy interviews given by Eric Ward. He's interviewed by the school he went to, and he has a bunch of interviews on this page, and he has a whole archive, just a tag just for interviews. And then Eric Ward in the news, media coverage. And so I had a very good feeling that Eric granted interviews, and I was right too. So I found the people in my industry, in this case Eric, who grant interviews and also links to those interviews after they're interviewed. Now, I have no idea what percentage Eric linked out to. He could have been interviewed 1,000 more times than what he's linking to on his site. But all I needed to know was that he does grant interviews and he does link to at least some of them after the interview. All right, so that'll save you a lot of time. And that's not hard finding the people who grant interviews and links to them, because you just do the site search and search their site for interviews, and when you find something, see if they're linking to it. And when you find that person that does both those things, well, you have yourself an interview prospect. That's when you reach out to him or her to ask if you can interview them. And there's some good ways and bad ways to do that. But what I like to start out with is, let me move this over. This is getting so long here. I like to tell them how I plan on promoting the interview. Otherwise, they're going to come out thinking, what's in it for me? This person is going to interview me. I'm going to give this person a half hour of my time, and this person's going to market off of my name, and probably is going to get some search traffic from it, and maybe even some social traffic, just associating themselves with my name. But that's fine. But what do I get out of it? That's why I like telling them what we're going to do to promote the interview. Right in the first paragraph. Hey, I'd love to do an interview. I'd love to interview you, Eric. And in the after it's done, I'm going to promote it on my blog or on my newsletter or on my Facebook page or on Twitter, or I'm going to do a Facebook paid ads, or I'm going to do a sponsored post on an authority site. So I didn't have to do this with Eric. And I ended up just promoting it on my blog and on social media. I didn't end up buying traffic for it, and I didn't promise to buy traffic for it. But if you have the budget, you could easily find an authority site in your industry that your golden prospect or the person you're interviewing would love to get onto. And then what you do is you do a sponsored post. You pay for the sponsored post for to post the interview on that authority site. But tell them up front what you're going to do to promote the interview once it's ready. Because then it gets it into their mind that, okay, there is something in it for me. I'm going to have this person out promoting me, promoting myself. That's good news. So, it's like it flips a switch in them when you do that. Because otherwise, you just look like you're somebody there with your hand out trying to take their time. But instead, show them what you're going to do to promote the interview right from the beginning, right before you even share the interview questions with them. All right, another thing I like to do as I'm asking them in the same email, as I send an email to ask them if I can interview them, I include the questions that I'm going to ask them. I write them out ahead of time. And if you do your research, you could go on to and get those questions really simple. It's not that hard to do it if you read their website, read their sales literature, and ask questions based on their sales literature. And I'll show you an example of that. Like, here's a link I got from Eric after interviewing him. And it looks like look at this. I got looks like 3 links, but they're all to the same page. So, interview with Eric Ward. That's when I interviewed him a year ago. And I also got a link over to looks like I got a link over to my Twitter page too. So 1, 2, 3 links to the same page on my blog and a Twitter link. All right, so now you can check out some of the questions I asked him, but I sent all these questions to Eric ahead of time. And we ended up talking over, we recorded the interview, and we spoke to each other. It wasn't like I sent him the interview questions like a roundup, and then he answered them all and sent them back, and then I put them up in a post. Though you should certainly offer that, because your prospect might not have the time to do an in-person interview, or rather on a phone, to be interviewed over the phone or their computer, but they have time to answer their questions. But your questions, and they do that because it's something in it for them. It's helping them to promote themselves, even though they don't have a lot of time themselves. This should go without saying. Ask questions that are going to build up the prospect and give them the chance to promote themselves. Don't, and like I said, and you can look at my questions. We had the intro discussion. All right. It looks like I did ask a question. Let me get to the actual question. Can you explain to listeners what link building is? That's a pretty basic question. So that was one of the first questions I asked Eric, and I included that in the email I sent him. Can you explain what link building is? And then I went further. So link building, and I knew what his answer was going to be, obviously. So link building is the ability for people to find your business online without searching for it on a search engine. And because Eric got more into it. And then I asked questions to Eric, like, I took an opportunity here and I responded to what he said, like, and you have to listen to the interview, but I would say things like, I like what you said. Awareness building. I don't think I've ever heard you say that. That nails it right there. If the right people become aware of your business, it just makes sense that it's going to make a significant impact. You see how I'm adding to what he said? And that helps pump him up even further. And it gives him even more opportunity to get deeper into what he's teaching. So ask some basic questions, but also ask questions that give them an opportunity to promote themselves. And this is a huge interview. I won't go through the whole thing. I'll link down below so you can, if you're interested, you could look at the whole interview. But I sent all those questions to Eric ahead of time when I asked him if I could interview him. And you should ask no more than 7 questions. In fact, in our interview, we went way over just because I kept adding to what Eric was saying, and I kept getting him to dig deeper into it. And so we went much further than 7 questions. But we were able to do that because I didn't play the hero. I wasn't constantly trying to interject and promote myself in the middle of the interview. And I know that a lot of people are tempted to do that. I was tempted. I did it myself when I was interviewing influencers back early in my career. I'd be talking about myself more than I was talking about the influencer. Why? Because I was talking to an influencer, and I was hoping the influencer's viewers would be watching it or listening to it back then, and that was going to get me business. I was just so excited that I started promoting myself. Obviously, that was a bad idea because there's no way that influencer is going to link to that or promote it themselves. They're just not going to do that. So don't play the hero in your interview. Your job is to let the guest be the hero. So build him or her up, and you're going to have a much better interview, and you're probably going to get better marketing out of it. Because for yourself, even though you're not promoting yourself in it, because you're going to get the influencer to promote it, and self-promotion stinks. It just makes you stick out like a sore thumb. So don't do that in these interviews. Now, in your when you're asking for the interview, and you write the interview questions ahead of time and include it in your request. Make sure to say, hey, listen, if you're running low on time, you could, I know you're busy, you can answer these by email. There's no reason to schedule a call. But if you're up to the call, that'd be great, and we could just record it, and then I'll edit it, and then I'll release it after that. But if you don't have time for even that, you can answer the questions by email. Then what I'll do is I'll put a post together, and then I'll promote it on Twitter and Facebook and however else I said I was going to promote it up here, up here. Now that's going to save you a lot of time too, but because some people just don't have the time, and they have anxiety issues. Just because they're an influencer doesn't mean they don't have anxiety. So should you miss out on those people just because they have anxiety or they're busy? No, send your questions. And another cool thing about sending your questions with your interview request is that it gives you an opportunity to set yourself up above everybody else who is reaching out to them for something, because your questions are going to be well written. Your questions are going to be about them. Your question isn't, tell me about the state of link building in 2018, or those roundup interview style questions. You're going to ask related questions to them, and you find those from their website. And I'm not going to go into how to write those questions. There's a lot of good things, resources you can do. Though, if you're going to Google something and for like interview questions, don't Google interview questions or how to conduct an interview, because a lot of job interview stuff comes up. So what I did, I mean, like the first several pages, you won't even find anything on interviewing others, how to interview others effectively. So what I did is sometimes if I want a couple extra questions and I'm like came up with 4 and I need 3 more, I'll go to like how to interview podcast interviews, and that brings up, tips on how to interview somebody on a podcast as opposed to a job interview. So just put that podcast interview rather than just interview if you want tips on how to come up with questions, because that'll save you a lot of time too. All right, let me back up a little bit. So once you found those, and you found somebody willing to be interviewed, and they want to be interviewed over the phone or some other platform, they're going to say, okay, how do you want to do the recording? And at that point, you could do it by email, but then again, they answer your questions via email, and then you put them into a post. That's going to be that's better than nothing. But it's not going to be something where you can, record the audio, obviously. They're just going to answer the questions and you put it up in a post. But if you want to do an audio and your prospect agrees to it, you could do it on Skype. That's how Eric and I communicated, and we recorded our call. Also, you could do a teleseminar, and there's lots of free tools you can use for teleseminars. Just look up free teleseminars. Then what you do is you set up a teleseminar and you only invite one person, that's your guest. That way it's only him or her with you on the call. That way if you mess up, you can do some chit chat at the beginning and not start the recording right away, that kind of thing. Teleseminars work great. Webinar software works great. Maybe you just get them on GoToMeeting and record it from there. Though I don't like the quality on GoToMeeting as much. I couldn't get a really good audio on it, so we ended up just recording on Skype. Also, you can, if you live close to the prospect, you can show up with your cell phone camera and a tripod and interview them right there in their office, if that's what will work for them. Usually that won't work. It's just because they're busy or they're all on the other side of the country. For the most part, these will be done on Skype and teleseminar software and webinar software, and email too. I guess you could also, if you can't find an email address for your prospect, you could easily write out a request, the same request that you were going to send in the email, and write your questions out, how you're going to promote it, and do that. But send it by snail mail, and I guess they could answer your questions by snail mail and write them down, and then you could put them into a post. But there's a lot of different ways to do it, but most people do it Skype and teleseminar. All right, now should it be live or recorded? Now, if you have a platform with a strong following, like if you have a regular podcast or you have a huge Facebook page you could do live Facebook events, and people will tune into it, or you regularly do webinars, and you have a weekly webinar. You could bring him or her in as a guest on the webinar and do the interview then. But for the most part, if you don't have a huge platform like that with a strong following, just record them. And recording them is just going to be you and them on the call, and it's less pressure. It gives you room to make mistakes, but also it helps you build a further relationship with them, because you're able to have a little small talk before and after the recording takes place. So it's something that I recommend that you do, is to record it rather than go live, because you can make some mistakes, and it's just less pressure for the guest and for you. Also, when you're done, whether it was if it's an audio, edit the interview, take out the jokes that didn't go over, or the times when your guest was speaking and you tried to speak over them. Take that out, edit it and clean it up the best you can and to the best of your ability, and that will help you get shares too. Because sometimes a live conversation is, it's one thing, but when you take that conversation and listen to it back. It's like, if you have like people, if you're talking over one another and those kind of situations, and it happens, it's no big deal when it happens. You just shut up and let the other person talk. But you may inadvertently start talking at the same time, and when you may want, you just edit that to the best of your ability. Also, once the audio is done, get a transcription. You can get transcriptions for really cheap. And then when you do that, make sure that you edit the transcription for reading, because we speak in one way and we read in another. And Jeff Walker turned me on to this, and he said he doesn't just place his transcripts to his videos and interviews. He actually edits them for reading, because we speak differently than we write, and we definitely read different than we listen. So edit the transcriptions for the before you post them on your site. Now, when you post the transcription, like what I did here on this interview with Eric, I think I did an audio. Yeah, you can. I think I just. What I did was I put the audio onto Camtasia, and I put a bunch of different screen. I think I just kept it. Yeah, it was just that. I just had a picture of Eric as let me get rid of this. I just had a picture of Eric with our names on it, and his picture and my picture. His picture's on there twice, and then I had the audio playing in the background. So if you want to play the interview, you want to get a little bit of branding of yourself on it. You don't want to just brand them. So that's what I did, and then I put the entire transcription on here, and it's been edited. And it's like a really long one. So you want to talk about a lot of content? Do an interview with an influencer, and you'll get a lot of content on your site, especially if you transcribe it, and it'll be good content too, because it's coming straight from the influencer. And if you edit it, it's going to be a great interview. All right, so that's my interview with Eric Ward. I never really promoted it that much. Look, I only had 3 likes, and I'll tweet it again. Most of it was done on, I just started my Facebook page up, so I don't get a lot of Facebook stuff. But I do have a Twitter account, so most of the shares were coming in from Twitter. And I noticed that Twitter doesn't show the accounts anymore. I guess they quit doing that a while back, so you can't see, maybe a year ago back, they quit showing you how many times an article has been shared on Twitter. I don't know why they did that, but they did it. But once I had this article up and posted, I sent it to Eric, and he had it posted onto this page probably within 3 days. And I wish what I would have done was had the podcast on one link, the transcription on another, and then I would end up getting a couple. I don't know if that would have made any difference, but interviews work. So don't be afraid to reach out to prospects at Grant Interviews to ask them if you can interview them, because they might just say yes, and then you're going to have a special time talk. Look at all this stuff on here, man. I'm going to have to end this module because I'm running out of space to show it on my screen. But give your prospects a chance to self-promote. Do that via the interview, and if you do that, there's going to be a lot better chance at getting them to link to it when you're done, and it's going to be something that's going to be of value to your viewers too, and your readers. So that's how I use interviews to get links. It's not that hard once you find prospects at Grant Interviews and link to them. You just have to make sure that you give them good questions, and you don't screw up your editing, don't screw up any of that, and put a good presentation together and get out of the way. And more chances than not, you're going to have a good link out of it and some good content on your site. So that's interview links.